At 1400 hours on February 28th, the coastal winds off the Black Sea masked the subtle hum of electric motors descending toward the settlement of Luzern in the occupied Kherson region. On the ground, personnel from the Russian-controlled Holopristansky District Police Department were conducting routine live fire exercises. They were emptying magazines into paper targets, completely focused on their front sights and the rhythmic percussion of their own rifles. The noise of their training created an acoustic blind spot, a self-imposed deafness that drowned out anything above them. They assumed the airspace was secure, trusting the layered air defense networks that supposedly blanketed the southern front. But that trust was misplaced. Several kilometers away, navigating a precise route through the invisible electromagnetic spectrum, a Ukrainian-made FP-2 strike drone was threading the needle. This was not a small quadcopter carrying a rigged grenade. It was a purpose-built penetrator carrying a 60-kilogram warhead, gliding low over the terrain to stay beneath the radar horizon. The drone operator, sitting hundreds of kilometers away in a darkened control room, watched the thermal feed of the firing range grow larger on the screen. The glowing heat signatures of the police officers stood out against the cold February earth like beacons. The officers were practicing to fight a ground war that was rapidly evolving into an entirely different kind of conflict, one where the threats do not politely wait on the horizon but drop silently from the gray winter sky. Before we continue, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. The reason this FP-2 drone could loiter over a military training ground without being shredded by proximity-fused missiles comes down to a systematic dismantling of the Russian protective umbrella. In the weeks leading up to this moment, units of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, specifically fighters from the 9th Battalion known as Kairos of the 414th Separate Brigade, had been executing a calculated suppression of enemy air defenses. They had systematically hunted the very machines designed to stop this scenario. A Buck surface-to-air missile system, an S-300V medium-range system, a Pantsir S-1 gun missile hybrid, and a Tor short-range system had all been dismantled in the occupied parts of the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. Without these radars sweeping the sky, the low-altitude corridors became uncontested highways. The police units training at Luzern were operating under a false assumption of safety, relying on an air defense grid that existed only on outdated situation reports. The operator adjusted the terminal approach vector, bypassing final potential threat sectors. The drone's guidance system locked onto the clustered thermal signatures at the firing line. The officers below continued their drills, entirely oblivious to the 60 kilograms of high explosives entering its final dive directly above their positions. The gap in the radar coverage was a meticulously engineered vulnerability. At the exact moment the local commander called a ceasefire on the range, the drone struck. The 60-kilogram warhead detonated with a catastrophic concussive force that instantly transformed the sterile training environment into a chaotic blast radius. Shrapnel tore through the winter air at supersonic speeds, catching the officers completely exposed in the open field. There was no time to seek the cover of blast walls or trenches, because nobody drops into a trench during a routine target practice. 5 Russian police officers were killed immediately in the violent overpressure of the blast. Among the dead was a major who served as the deputy head of the Holopristansky District Department, alongside several high-ranking inspectors, holding the ranks of lieutenant and senior lieutenant. The precision of the strike decapitated the local leadership structure in a fraction of a second. 5 other personnel were thrown to the ground, sustaining severe injuries from the fragmentation wave that swept across the firing line. The live-fire exercise abruptly transitioned into a desperate triage situation. Surviving officers scrambled to apply tourniquets and drag their wounded colleagues out of the open, screaming into their radios for immediate medical evacuation and command support. They assumed, as many conventionally trained units do, that the explosion was an isolated event, a single lucky strike that had spent its fury. They established a perimeter and waited for their command structure to arrive. This assumption is exactly what the drone operators were counting on. In the brutal logic of modern drone warfare, a single strike is rarely the end of the engagement. It is often just the bait. The Ukrainian operators understood Russian tactical protocols perfectly. When a high-ranking officer goes down, the next person in the chain of command is required to rush to the scene to assess the damage, manage the evacuation, and restore operational order. The sky above Luzern remained seemingly empty, but the invisible electromagnetic data links were already vectoring a second asset toward the same coordinates. For 30 agonizing minutes, the survivors on the ground tended to the injured lieutenants and guarded the perimeter, watching the road for their commanding officer. The psychological toll of sitting in the wreckage of a sudden strike, bleeding and waiting for help, drains morale faster than any prolonged firefight. but the sky offered no further clues. The operators simply held their position in the digital ether, monitoring the live feed and waiting for the high-value target to emerge. The trap was set, relying not just on advanced technology and 60-kilogram warheads, but on the predictable human nature of military bureaucracy. The surviving personnel believed the worst was over, unaware that the airspace above them had fundamentally changed from a safe training environment into a tightly monitored kill box, waiting for the final piece to step into the center. Exactly 30 minutes after the first 60-kilogram warhead shattered the Holoprostansky district training ground, the sound of approaching vehicles broke the tense silence. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Shelov, the head of the department, arrived at the Luzern firing range just as doctrine demanded. He stepped out of his vehicle to survey the wreckage, stepping into a perfectly calculated kill box. In modern drone warfare, this is known as a double-tap strike, a psychological and tactical maneuver designed specifically to eliminate first responders and command personnel. As Shelov walked among the injured lieutenants and the wreckage of his shattered command, the operators watching the live feed hundreds of kilometers away confirmed the high-value target was in position. They did not hesitate. The second drone, which had been loitering in the cold air above the electromagnetic noise, initiated its terminal dive. It plummeted toward the settlement of Luzern with terrifying speed, its electric motors whining only at the very last second. The detonation was surgically precise. The blast wave caught the lieutenant colonel completely exposed. Shrapnel ripped through the air, tearing into his abdomen and lower limbs, dropping him instantly onto the blood-soaked soil of the training range. He was seriously wounded, his command structure decimated in the span of 30 minutes by an enemy they could not even see. The Russian Interior Ministry was forced to officially confirm the devastating attack on March 2nd, an unusual admission of vulnerability that highlighted the absolute failure of their local air defense networks. This was not merely a lucky strike by a rogue operator, but the culmination of a systematic blinding campaign orchestrated by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, known by the call sign Madhyar. His units, specifically the fighters from the 9th Battalion Kairos of the 414th Separate Brigade, had spent the preceding weeks carving massive blind spots into the Russian radar coverage across the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. The skies above Luzern were supposed to be locked down by overlapping radar frequencies, but instead, they had become a free fire zone. The destruction of the police command staff was simply the deadly symptom of a much larger tactical disease infecting the Russian southern front, where their most advanced radar systems were being dismantled piece by piece. The brutal reality of these precision strikes stands in stark contrast to the long-term geopolitical strategies being drafted in Moscow. While lieutenant colonels are bleeding out on shattered training grounds, the Russian government is simultaneously pursuing a massive demographic engineering project designed to consolidate their grip on the occupied territories. Their bureaucratic blueprint aims to attract more than 113,000 people to the occupied parts of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions by the year 2045. It is a desperate attempt to legitimize their military footprint by flooding the zone with a compliant civilian population, building a human shield of infrastructure and administration over land that is actively being contested. But the drone operators hunting in the electromagnetic spectrum do not care about bureaucratic timelines or demographic quotas. They see only thermal signatures, grid coordinates, and the persistent gaps in the Russian air defense network, trying to convince over 100,000 civilians to relocate to a region where high-ranking police officials cannot even conduct a live-fire exercise without being erased from the sky. Is a staggering contradiction. The airspace over the southern front has fundamentally changed. The demographic plans of 2045 mean nothing to a 60-kilogram warhead arriving today. At 1600 hours, the panic at the Luzern firing range had crystallized into a desperate defensive posture. The surviving officers had dragged Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Shelov into the back of a shattered armored personnel carrier, but the sky still felt heavy with unseen threats. The local command network, functioning on backup frequencies, screamed for immediate electronic warfare support to plug the gaping hole in their aerial roof. In response, a Russian Pol-21 electronic jamming complex was dispatched from a staging area 40 kilometers to the east. This system is designed specifically to sever the control links of incoming drones by flooding the spectrum with broadband static, creating an invisible dome of electromagnetic interference over a radius of dozens of kilometers. It is the electronic equivalent of throwing a thick wool blanket over a swarm of hornets, suffocating their ability to navigate or communicate. A heavy transport truck carrying the jamming antennas rumbled down the scarred coastal highway, its operators frantically initiating the warm-up sequence for their generators. They knew the airspace over the training ground was bleeding, and their sole mission was to cauterize the wound before another 60-kilogram warhead could find the medical evacuation convoy. But the operators of the 9th Battalion Kairos were not blind to this development. Their electronic intelligence suites, monitoring the spectrum from deep within Ukrainian-held territory, detected the massive power surge of the Pol-21 system coming online as it rolled down the highway. The jamming signal bloomed on their monitors like a blinding digital sunrise, threatening to sever the connection to any remaining assets in the sector. Instead of retreating, the commander authorized the immediate launch of a specialized loitering munition, a fixed-wing interceptor painted in flat gray to blend perfectly against the overcast winter sky. This aircraft was not relying on standard commercial frequencies that the Russian jammers could easily crush. Instead, it utilized a narrow beam, frequency-hopping data link that changed channels thousands of times per second. Trying to jam this specific signal is like trying to catch a single specific drop of rain in a torrential downpour using nothing but a pair of tweezers. The Ukrainian interceptor entered a shallow dive, building kinetic energy as it hugged the contour of the terrain, staying below 30 meters to use the natural curvature of the Earth and the dense winter tree lines as a physical shield against the expanding bubble of Russian electronic warfare. Inside the cabin of the Russian heavy transport, the electronic warfare operators watched their screens with a false sense of security. Their system was broadcasting at maximum output, pumping kilowatts of interference across the global positioning system bands and standard telemetry channels. They believed they had established a sterile corridor for the medical evacuation, a protective dome that nothing could penetrate without losing its navigational mind. However, the Ukrainian fixed-wing drone was not navigating by satellite coordinates alone. As the jamming intensified and the digital noise floor rose, the drone's onboard computer seamlessly transitioned to a purely inertial navigation system, supplemented by optical terrain recognition. Its downward-facing camera compared the physical roads and rivers passing below with a preloaded digital map stored safely inside its hardened memory banks. The drone essentially stopped listening to the poisoned sky and started reading the ground instead. At exactly 16 hours and 42 minutes, the visual feed in the Ukrainian control room flickered heavily. As the drone breached the absolute core of the jamming bubble, the latency spiked to 400 milliseconds, causing the video frame to stutter and tear into gray digital artifacts. But the operator did not need a perfect picture. They only needed the massive rectangular silhouette of the transport truck filling the center of the crosshairs. The operator pushed the throttle forward, commanding a terminal dive angle of 45 degrees. The drone accelerated, its aerodynamic frame cutting through the frigid coastal wind. For the Russian operators inside the cab, there was absolutely no warning. Their system was designed to fry electronics, not detect physical objects dropping from the blind spot directly above them. The shaped charge warhead struck the roof of the vehicle directly over the generator compartment. The detonation instantly vaporized the power supply, sending a shockwave of overpressure and molten copper through the chassis. The massive jamming antennas snapped and collapsed into the burning wreckage, and the invisible electromagnetic dome that had covered the sector vanished in a fraction of a second. The sky was suddenly wide open again, leaving the evacuation convoy entirely exposed. With the Pol-21 system reduced to a burning pyre of twisted metal and shattered circuit boards on the coastal highway, the reality of the situation crashed down upon the Russian medical evacuation convoy. They knew exactly what that silence meant. The protective shield had been shattered. They were driving 3,000 kilograms of thin steel down a perfectly straight, elevated road surrounded by open agricultural fields, making them the most obvious thermal targets within 50 kilometers. The drivers slammed their accelerators to the floor, pushing the heavy vans to speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, their tires screaming against the cracked asphalt. High above the cold waters of the Dnipro River, a third Ukrainian drone had been holding in a wide, energy-conserving orbit, patiently waiting for the electronic warfare suppression to lift. This was a highly agile first-person view interceptor, carrying a high-explosive anti-tank munition strapped directly to its ventral chassis. The moment the digital interference vanished from the operator's display, the drone banked hard to the south, its electric motors whining as it entered a steep, aggressive descent toward the coastal highway. The operator picked up the thermal signatures of the two speeding transport vans almost immediately. They were glowing bright white against the dark, freezing background of the winter fields, leaving long trails of hot exhaust gas that pointed directly to their position. The operator selected the trailing vehicle, the one carrying the wounded lieutenant colonel, and initiated an intercept vector. Tracking a moving vehicle traveling at 100 kilometers per hour requires immense skill, balancing the drone's velocity against the crosswinds coming off the Black Sea. The operator made microscopic adjustments to the control sticks, manually flying the drone down to an altitude of just 2 meters above the asphalt, effectively tucking the aircraft directly into the slipstream of the fleeing Russian transport van. The Russian driver, staring into his rearview mirror, saw nothing but the empty highway stretching out behind them, completely unaware that a winged explosive device was hovering less than 10 meters from his rear bumper. As the vehicle shifted its weight into the turn, exposing the vulnerable hinges and thin sheet metal of the cargo area, the operator slammed the throttle to maximum power. The drone surged forward, closing the final gap in less than half a second. The contact fuse struck the metal plating, triggering a shaped charge that punched a stream of superheated plasma straight through the rear doors and into the crowded cabin. The kinetic force of the impact ripped the rear axle completely off the chassis, sending the mangled transport van violently rolling off the elevated highway and into the frozen mud of the adjacent ditch. The entire command structure of the district had been systematically erased by operators sitting hundreds of kilometers away.